Well, you know I want to say, hey, happy Wednesday, but I know better. Only because I have a script and a list of people that I know are on Thursdays with the show. Just to save me, since we weren't here yesterday, if you were looking for the missing episode. No episode exists. Hey, if you're also making notes, 7 more shows. We're beginning this one, and we have 7 more to go before we wrap up Kelly and Company. So we better get into it because it is jammed, squeezed, tight, packed. On today's show, Lawrence Gunther shares how we can all become a voice for the largely silent underwater world out there that covers 71% of the Earth's surface. Many of us are using AI to help us with our job applications, but how is that being received by employers out there? We discuss the do's and don'ts with Robert Half's Michael French when he joins us shortly. And non-alcoholic drinks are booming in Canada. We've talked about it on the show with Mary Mammoliti. Chef Mary Mammoliti will talk to us about what is actually out there and trending and what could be poured next. Well, I'll tell you, we pour out a full cup of Kelly and Company right now.
This is Kelly and Company.
Kelly MacDonald here. On your Thursday, as we get you ready for a full show, a real full show, Nazreen Abdel-Majid, boy, it's great when you have so many conversations ahead, but you start already feeling like, gosh, so much here ahead, we've got to get in. And it gives you a tiny bit of anxiety, Niz.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how I'm feeling.
Yeah, but it's nice because so many great speakers, so many great topics. Let's get started. Have you checked out an audio-described dance performance yet, folks? If not, well, we're going to prime you right now. There are some interesting approaches to describing dance out there. And, of course, Christine Malec is here to chat about them with us. Chris, welcome back. And we're going to kick things off with a bit of audio to kind of before we get into this conversation, aren't we?
Yes, and this is so interesting to me for a few reasons. What we're going to hear is a couple of minutes of an excerpt from a described little scene of the ballet Swan Lake. And what makes this especially interesting is that the people doing the describing, and I did say people, there's 2 of them, are not professional describers. One is Dan Yashinsky, a professional storyteller. The other is Anne-Marie Cabri, who's a dancer with the National Ballet and she's a dance teacher and she's with the National Ballet. And these are 2 sighted friends of mine who got really interested in the idea of describing dance. And so on their own recognizance, they took a piece of Swan Lake and they experimented with audio describing it. And so they didn't know the rules. And so they were at perfect liberty to do what seemed appropriate to them. They know some blind people. And as a storyteller and a dancer, they took a really neat approach. And so let's listen to the audio because there's a lot to unpack from it.
Announcing Prince Siegfried. We're in the ballroom. They're courtiers with long dresses, lots of jewels. The queen is taking her place before the prince enters. He comes onto stage, pauses a moment, and nods to the courtiers in the background. Coming down now to his mother, the queen, he takes her hand in both of his and kisses gently on the wrist as 6 maidens enter. Stepping on a turned-out foot, they bow, curtsying, hoping to catch his eye.
You are the prince, but you don't want to be here. You're dancing half-heartedly with these beautiful young women who you are meant to choose to marry, but you are only thinking of Odette. There's your mother watching, disappointed, as you remain aloof.
The prince does go to one maiden, and they start a pas de deux, pose up in arabesque, and he motions towards her to the audience and takes a full promenade before she finishes in a pirouette and a bow, and he slowly floats over and arrives with 2 maidens, pose and temps levé, 3rd arabesque. His arms float down as he sees and approaches another maiden.
So, of course, you start thinking the technique, especially, Chris, as you speak about the fact that they don't have that experience. They took that interest in saying, hey, and they're working with something that so many of us know. Well, quite frankly, is delivered in ways with singers, without singers, and things you have to navigate, but also multiple things, as we've spoken about, going on at once. I have to wonder, too, how much the fact that they are non-traditional describers in this sense, if you would see that as a negative or a positive. Obviously, voice usage doing it is a bit different than what we're used to, but we're broadening out things when it comes to description, and I think all of us are getting on that page of being more open-minded, not just what we prefer.
Yes, and I would say that they are at a definite advantage because if you've experienced traditional described dance, it's much more literal, and that was extremely different. It was really different from what I've experienced in described dance. So they were not. It's not like they were being paid by a dance company, and so we judge them as, oh, how do they do? They're completely experimenting and taking their skill sets, which are knowing the dance and having a well-developed sense of story, so that what you get is something completely different, and you get opinions. So Anne
Yeah.
Marie, like later in the piece, Anne Marie says, beautiful. She uses the word beautiful. A describer would never do that. But
No.
as a description user, I want that. I want to be guided. Like I want to be helped through understanding the emotion of the dance. And the other thing that I loved so much was the two voices, because I really feel that dance is two parts. It's the physical movements, but it's the meaning and emotion also. And so Dan, as the storyteller, is coming in and playing with the voice. So instead of the neutral third person, he's like, you are the prince. And immediately you're
Mhm.
drawn in a new way. And later he experiments with I or we. And I think those are really powerful tools that are extremely provocative and interesting for describers to be experimenting with.
Mm.
So, what strikes you most about this approach?
Um, I think the fact that it's a dancer and a storyteller, because a describer is trained, as we've said, describe what you see. And so that's pretty straightforward. She lifts her arm, she waves, but a dance is much more than a series of movements. So a dancer can she uses some technical terms, so there's no doubt that you would need a primer to know what some of those terms mean that she's using as shorthand. But she's a dancer, so she can tell you what the characters are doing, what how they are enacting the story. And I think this is one of the difficulties I've had with a lot of described dance, is that they describe a series of movements, but because I lack the visual language and maybe I don't know the story, I don't know the aim of those movements. What are the how do those movements carry forward the story? But Anne Marie will just
Mhm.
be like, she kisses the queen, he kisses the queen's hand, and Dan will say, but you're not interested in what you're doing. You look sort of checked out. So those judgments are that, and the multiple voices, but the actual judgments of this is beautiful, or the prince is completely checked out, or the queen is looking gracious. Those value judgments to me
Yeah.
are gold. They're what I
It's a
want
deeper
in a dance
interpretation.
performance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's people who know the material. Like it's a dancer and a storyteller, so they're sort of experts in communicating
Mhm.
what the end user wants, as someone who's trying to understand dance.
Um,
Mhm.
It's like finding that place online. If you look at a movie and somebody has decided they're going to talk over the movie, telling you different things, whether they're from the creative team or just, hey, I'm a fan of this movie, I want to, make comments about it. Some people do it funny, some people take it very serious. And if you're into that, you'll watch it. Some would say, why is some moron doing this? This is stupid. Other people love it. They say, this is great. I'm getting something from this. Hey, they feel the same way I do. I've always thought that. We are learning about the more multi-purposes. We brought JJ on the show. We said goodbye to him, by the way, last week, folks, if you want to check out his last segment. But one of the things JJ had to do for what we were asking him to do is tell stories. Go back and do a description for us, but also tell the stories. Me as a sports fan, and you've heard me say this, Chris, to you before, you've got here people from the storytelling field and from dance itself. On baseball broadcasts, often now, years ago, it was the straight commentator telling you the action. The color commentator, yeah, I noticed he took a stick in the chin. Ouch. Now you've got a former player who can talk about, oh man, when you get a stick in the chin like that, it rattles your chiclets. So you have that extra commentary you didn't have before that people maybe 50 years ago didn't necessarily welcome. You get a catcher a guy who used to play as a catcher commentating on baseball. He talks, and what he watching a game sees brings him back to when he was on the field, seeing everything, which we become, as you just said, richer for, because now you want that experience of a description-rich story this way. So what are the pros and cons then, Chris, of more opinion and that kind of description that you've got when it comes to dance?
I'll start with the cons because I actually find that harder. The cons are that you're not getting the level of detail that you might want. You're not getting the breakdown of the body movements. You're not getting the play-by-play, if I may say so, of where each character is on the stage. So you're missing some of the literal, the
Action.
minutiae of the action, and you're missing neutrality. Some people value neutrality, and so those, I guess, are some of the cons. Also, if we agree to dive into experiments, every time you go to a show, you don't really know what you're going to get. So the predictability also you might miss if we all just overnight decided let's be experimental. For me, the pros outweigh the cons, which is that as so it's always good to remember that the blind community is absolutely heterogeneous. We're as diverse as any community. So not everyone's going to feel the way I do about this, but having never been able to see dance, I'm starting from zero. So I really want to be metaphorically guided through. I want to be told that something's beautiful, because without someone pointing that out, I want the shorthand like graceful. That's a word that it has some meaning for me. So I want the subjectivity. I think that subjectivity is okay if we decide that describing dance can be its own art. The art of describing dance could be a thing, not just the craft of describing dance. And I think the potential to draw in the audience member, so that the blind audience member is having as close to the same experience as the sighted audience member. And I was talking about this in the Curiosity Club, which I run for the CNIB Foundation. Yesterday, we had a discussion about this, and someone pointed out that, and they really hit the nail on the head here, where when I'm at a dance performance, traditionally described, I'm working. I feel like I've got a job to do, which is to parse all the things being said and compose them into a whole. And that feels effortful. It feels like a lot to keep track of, but the sighted viewer is not having that experience. They're having a flowy experience that I might have at a concert. So if we can reproduce that flowy aesthetic enjoyment without having to work so hard as an audience member, you can tune in, tune out, and not miss anything. That's a good goal for me. So that's a pro for me, is that this can help to approximate the experience that a sighted viewer is having in terms of the emotion, the aesthetics, and the experience.
So you wanted to talk about an upcoming event with experimental dance description. Tell us about that.
I do. So all of these discussions, JJ has been a party to a lot of these discussions, because we all just sort of live in the same neighborhood and know each other. So lucky us.
Yeah.
And so on June 21st, as part of the Luminato Festival, there's still time if you're in the GTA. JJ will be describing a piece called What the Day Owes to the Night. And there's less narrative than Swan Lake, but JJ's description is defined as experimental. He's trying new things, and his description style is very much informed by what Dan and Anne-Marie have been contributing to these ideas. So there's still time if you are in the GTA. The show's this Saturday, June 21st, and What the Day Owes to the Night. And you can look on the Luminato website for that, or you can email our divine concierge named Emily. So her email address is emaxwell at luminato.com. And all of this is in the show notes as well. So if you're able to make it, I can't encourage you strongly enough. If you're interested in this topic, it's going to be something that we haven't heard before.
Also, the Luminosity podcast roundtable discussion, too, sounds like it must have been very interesting. This is all about described dance, and if you're in or near Toronto, as Chris was saying, check out JJ's description on Saturday, June 21st. Chris, excellent work as usual. Last time I can use those words and make you say, yeah, but you say that every time. You've been our arts consultant for the past few years on the show, and we've had the most fascinating conversations around the blind and low vision experience, pertaining particularly with art and all the things that package brings with it. If you're interested in more Christine, folks, and our good friend audio describer JJ Hunt, check out their podcast, Talk Description to Me. Chris, we give you the floor here. Thank you so much for what you do with us.
I'm making a gesture of wiping my eyes. I've been so grateful to have the opportunity to share stuff that I'm working on and just interesting stuff for the blind community. So thanks back to you guys. Thanks for being a platform where we can all talk about stuff that's relevant to all of us. I'm blowing
so
you a
unique.
kiss dramatically.
Aw.
Yeah.
Oh, that's it. That's it.
This is
Describe that.
back.
It's also fantastic because we like to say this is the only place you're going to hear this and get these conversations other than what you guys are doing, with, of course, Radio Illumi and so on. It's places like this that exist now. And, of course, we love the fact that this live show era of AMI has been a part of telling people about it, encouraging people to get on board, to experiment and give opinions. So thank you so much for bringing it right to our door.
Double thumbs up. Thank you guys for being a place where all these great conversations happen.
Christine Malec, her last segment here on the program, ladies and gentlemen, told you how you can check out other content and things that Chris is doing. Get involved, get into the conversation. It's Nazreen and Kelly here on Kelly and Company.
Lawrence Gunther is the director of the New Bluefish Exploration Center, founder and president of the Canadian charity Bluefish Canada, and the host of the Bluefish radio show. He's a busy guy. Lawrence has spent much of his life exploring Canada's rivers, lakes, and longest coastline in the world, and works closely with scientists, Indigenous knowledge keepers, and local champions to better understand how we impact aquatic animals and their habitat. Today, we are talking about becoming a voice for the largely silent underwater world. Lawrence, why are you issuing this call for action to listeners to become voices for the animals that exist in underwater worlds?
Well, I just this whole push to use artificial intelligence to try to, crack the code of animal language. And, you see this big focus on, can they talk? What are they saying? We need to understand what they're saying. And it's all about, the voices, communications for these animals. And I'm thinking, well, there's way more ways to understand animals. I mean, most of what animals do and how they communicate with each other is through body language. Think about dogs, right? They don't go out there and hunt in the bush, in the wild, and talk to each other the whole time. Hey, I think there's a rabbit over here. Come and have a look. It's all body language. Making sound scares prey away. Our own guide dogs, right? They don't talk to us, but we understand how they're feeling just by their body language, how they're acting that day, how they communicate with us through touch. And as a result, we speak for them. We take them to the vet, we take them outside, we take them for walks, we feed them, we understand what they're saying. So why can't we, learn to understand wild animals and be voices for them as well? Why do we have to have all this artificial intelligence trying to crack the code and get the dolphins to talk and figure out what they're saying?
True.
Wow, that's fantastic. And when you think about it, it's so true, the different ways. And again, you can sit there and say, well, I don't really know how much they communicate with each other, whether it's insects, animals. But one of the concerns, because it's so kept from our prying eyes, ears, is underwater, Lawrence. I mean, we know less about our underwater world on this planet, the 71% you're talking about, than we do space.
Mm-hmm. It's true. And you think about the billions of animals that live under the surface of just the Great Lakes, right? I mean, we're taking millions and millions of fish out of the Great Lakes commercially every year. And that's just a drop in the bucket. in terms of recreational fishing, in terms of indigenous subsistence fishing and their commercial fishing and so on. We have no idea of how many fish we're taking out of the Great Lakes, but we do know it's the most valuable freshwater fishery in the world. We do know that there's a healthy, vibrant amount of life and native fish species, and the Great Lakes are doing better than they have in over 100 years. But yet, because they're silent, because they're out of sight below the surface and we don't see them unless you go fishing for them, we just ignore them. So as a result, we're dumping in, nucleides, PFAS chemicals, microplastics, and all sorts of horrible, the pharmaceuticals that enter the water stream through our sewage treatment plants. It's changing the fish. It's creating misery for the fish. If we pump that kind of toxicity into our atmosphere for us to breathe, we would be hopping up and down. So why aren't we hopping up and down and advocating on behalf of the fish? There's millions and millions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it cycles around to get us. It really does.
Yeah. So what can we do, Lawrence, to get involved?
I think, we're really good at understanding stories. And I think scientists aren't great at telling stories, but there are people who tell great stories. I mean, we learn from indigenous people that storytelling is super effective. You don't have to be preachy. You don't have to be, heavy-handed. You don't have to be telling people what to do. You have to tell the stories of these animals. That's how indigenous people have been doing it for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. That's how they educate. It's not by books. It's not by, writing things down so much. It's by telling these stories that have been passed on from multiple generations. We can help with that storytelling. We can take, that scientific knowledge, that local knowledge, that traditional knowledge, and we can help magnify and those stories so that people have an understanding and start to have a feel. Some science, some numbers, but the story itself, right? If we don't include the story with all the data, it's just boring data. And maybe some nerds out there love the data, and you have to have the data. You have to have quantitative type evidence to prove that you're not just making all this stuff up. But in the end, it's got to be a story.
I think when we talk about the Great Lakes and the fascination that and I think the pride we should have, especially people living in this basin, part of the world, part of Canada, part of North America, the Great Lakes Basin, I think about all the things of any neglect, how we know you can throw off any balance of any ecosystem so easy, Lawrence. And we hear things in the news such as the new administration in the United States isn't so interested in dealing with some of the things that are involved with the lakes. And unfortunately, their decisions or our decisions impact the other. I know there must be a lot of conversation about that because I think of our rivers, I think about our lakes, the little, the big ones, and just the world you're talking about that is so silent. When you step up to the side, we're listening for the water rippling, we're listening to waves and stuff like that, but we're not hearing the billions of conversations going on underneath it. Not possible. But we know on top of that, what we're doing that hurts it. And I can imagine there's a lot of concern out there of people pertaining, what are these cutbacks in the United States going to mean when it comes to the Great Lakes? This resource of water that so many states and provinces rely on, the resource of fish that you were talking about.
Yeah, you pull away the scientists, you fire them, you muzzle them, and we're seeing that. The International Association of Great Lakes Research just had their conference 2 weeks ago in the United States. It's a international organization. There were scientists there from Canada and the United States, and a lot of scientists were told not to come, by their bosses on the American side, and a lot of the universities on the Canadian side told their professors and scientists not to cross the border for fear that they might not be able to come back. And there's just that alone. And then add on top of that, climate change. So like this year, the Great Lakes have never been lower. It's the lowest they've been in over 30 years, and it's the coldest they've been in over 30 years. So what's going on there? All this climate change, it's just, the weather patterns are changing. And then add on top of that, this big push to bring factories back to North America. and factories need water. So they're going to locate around the Great Lakes for sure. So you have the cutbacks and EPA regulations. The Environmental Protection Agency in the U.S. are cutting back on their regulations in terms of what can be dumped into the water coming out of these factories, and more factories going to be positioned along the Great Lakes. Look, we got the Great Lakes. We're bringing them back to health. They've been better than they have for over 100 years. Yeah, there's still a whole bunch of areas of concern that need to be cleaned up, but it could be the case that they're going to start to deteriorate again. And if we don't stand up for the water, and the water we drink, 40 million of us drink out of the Great Lakes, but also the animals that live in that water, right? If we don't stand up for those animals, who's going to?
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, how
Before
do we do
let you go, yeah, how do we
how do we voice? Like, I mean, you get frustrated. We can sit here and say, well, with them cutting back, but we get into our oh well, we can't go there.
One way is to celebrate these animals, right? I mean, there's fish. They have millions of eggs every year. They populate like crazy because they're prey and they're used to being eaten, in large numbers. That's why they populate so broadly and so successfully. You take one fish, you share it with your family, you share it with your friends, you celebrate that fish's life, and you say, look, these fish are abundant, the numbers are good, their health is good right now, but if we're not careful, we might not be able to do this again. And tell the story about that fish and how that fish has given up its life so you can celebrate the health of the ecosystem, so you can eat fresh out of the ecosystem and not from some giant farm or greenhouse. That still is safe enough to eat wild grown food. And fish is one of the last wild grown foods we still eat around the world, right? 600 million people depend on fish as their primary source of protein. If we break that connection, we're just stepping away. And we're going to say, we want the jobs and screw the fish. Screw the fish.
Yeah.
Very sad.
Well, thank you so much, Lawrence. Yeah, it is sad. It is. But this is very important to bring up. So we appreciate you having time for us. And thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. You guys, I miss talking to you guys and having this opportunity to give a voice myself for some of these issues, but we will pursue this and keep going in other channels and other ways. And I look forward to connecting with you guys in these other ways.
Well, Lawrence, you did a lot with the network as part of the era of these great shows that we've been doing. We're celebrating the live show era, which you've been a part of. Coming to join our show when we became, since October, this new version of Kelly and Company, and what you've brought each month to us has been fantastic. And I have to say thank you so much for what you've given in information that so many of us would never have in any other way, bringing things to our attention to make us jump up and say, oh, wow, take notice. Over the years, you've been involved with AMI Audio. Thank you so much, and Fedora's off to you, pal.
Oh, man, it's been good to get to know you over the years, my friend. And Nazreen, great working with you, too, on the podcast. We did over 100 episodes of Outdoors with Lawrence Gunther. We've got some good work behind us, right? We got a lot to be proud of, for sure. That work's going to stand the test of time. Yeah.
It will. And we're going to stay connected for sure.
Sounds good. Something else coming, I'm sure.
You bet.
Yes.
Thanks, pal.
All right.
Without doubt, people without sight are excellent at communicating, and we've all developed terrific advocacy skills. Maybe it's time we put those skills to work on behalf of other animals that need to be heard. You can follow Lawrence Gunther on social media or by visiting his website, lawrencegunther.com. If you want to volunteer, Bluefish Canada is always looking for new recruits to become champions of nature. Visit bluefishcanada.ca and sign up for the newsletter or listen to the Bluefish radio show. And for those who want to take their passion for nature to the next level, let the folks at Bluefish Canada know you would like to take part in one of their programs at the new Bluefish Exploration Center. There's so much you can do.
Curiouser and curiouser, ladies and gentlemen. That's what I have to say, because a new Robert Half survey of over 1,500 hiring managers across Canada has revealed that nearly 8 out of 10 say they can tell when a candidate has used AI to generate their application materials. In today's complex job market, candidates face a range of challenges. We all know that, and many are turning to generative AI to help them stand out and get ahead. Are we taking the tool too far? That's the question. So let's have a discussion about this with Michael French of Robert Half Canada, who joins us now. Michael, always wonderful to have you, but what an interesting discussion, one that we have had touched on, I think, in every discussion since over the last year and a half at least. So what's the gist of this recent survey?
Well, first of all, hi, Kelly. Hi, Nazreen. Thank you for having me on. This was really interesting, and I got to tell you, it is a real conundrum. So we heard from over 1,000 hiring managers that they can tell when someone uses AI. But then when they hire them, they can't figure out, well, why won't my people use AI? So we're in a weird scenario here. So we did some research, and so we started talking to job seekers. We talked to employers all the time. And so we asked job seekers, what is the challenge and what's standing in the way of you and an opportunity? And we kind of had three real standout answers. The first one is they can't find jobs that align with their skills. Well, that could be because every job posting now has AI in it, and you may have never worked with AI. So that could be the obvious one. But it's so new that you got to learn it somewhere. So you might as well learn it on the next job. The second thing that came up was they spend a lot of time, and all the time they spend preparing and executing on an interview. And you know what, that might be a bit of overthinking, but you know what, you got to interview. We've done lots of them, so that one, there's probably some help that can be done with AI. But the last one, this one surprised me. They spend a lot of time, and the obstacle they come up with was crafting the application material, so your resume or your cover letter, to make it stand out. And so all three of those really could be helped with AI. But then we have these companies saying, I can tell when someone uses AI. And so that is a real conundrum. And so in chatting more with organizations and looking at how we use it and how many companies use it, there's a couple of things you'd be really careful of. And so AI is new. We've been talking about it now. I'd say, Kelly, you're right, probably a year and a half. 2 years ago, who had heard of ChatGPT? Maybe some math students, but that was it. I tell you, I hadn't heard of it. I heard of sort of machine learning and AI, but I hadn't really heard of ChatGPT, which was some of our first experience with it. And so any job seeker, you could actually do your resume in AI, but I would tell you then, make sure you refine it. Make sure you read it. Make sure you really spend some time making sure it's authentic to who you are. Make sure it represents who you are. You got to make sure it's ethical. So make sure it represents who you are and don't have any skills that you don't have. And you want to leverage AI really, really smart. It's great for brainstorming. It's not great for copy paste, but it's great for coming up with ideas, job ideas, questions for an interview you should ask. It's great to use it that way, but I wouldn't necessarily say that you can take AI, have your resume, do up your cover letter, send it off, and they're going to hire you. That's going to be way too obvious. AI isn't specific enough or personalized enough to stand out in the crowd. It'll get you information, but then you got to use the information. It's not personal. It's general.
What are the do's and don'ts of using generative AI for these purposes?
Ooh, that's a good one. So really clear. Good for research. Great for coming up with ideas. Great for coming up with, well, who would hire someone like me? Who hires people with my skills? So any kind of research that you need to do, AI is really good for that. Places that's a no. Anytime you want to come up with some copy that you plan, just copy paste. Everything needs to be edited to reflect who you are. And when you start looking at things that you read online, you can tell if something is generative AI. It says something. It's not specific. There's no emotion behind it. There's no enthusiasm behind it. It just states the fact. Nice, clean. There's the fact. Nothing more. But it doesn't get you excited. And to get the job, two people got to be excited. You have to be excited, and the person has to be excited to hire you. So you both have to be excited.
Yeah, and your supportive materials accurate. I think that's how people find, because if you quote a number they've put out there on they do so many widgets a year, and that number's from 1999 or 2015, they might say, no, last year we released this person's is not doing their homework to know our company, to show they care already and want to work here. I think too, it's interesting you said that when they get hired, they hesitate to use AI at work, that these employers are finding, hey man, go in there and use it. Do you think, Michael, it's okay for us to say, here's my resume, here's my cover letter, I'll tailor it to this job, I'll throw a couple little things in that I'll use AI for, but almost still like we're closet using it? So I want people to think I'm interested, I want this job, but when I get to work, I want them to think of me as smart, so I don't want them to know that I'm sneaking off, turning the light off in the room, grabbing my phone and looking up ChatGPT stuff to support this job or get ideas. I want to walk in and say, have we ever thought about, that's a remarkable idea, Bob. Good.
Yeah.
Boy, never thought of that, except for when I used ChatGPT last week. I wonder if sometimes there's the hesitations that we have, because we all have our ego and we all want to be, I want to make my way here. And I think it's almost like telling someone, yeah, but come here. Here's how you do it. Use AI to work for you and cheat. And I think that's what we think, as opposed to thinking of it as the tool now that we're all using. Is this at all remotely, did the survey portray any of this?
Well, Kelly, you hit the nail on the head. That is my opinion. I got to tell you, I had a scenario a few weeks ago where I had to send a couple people who work for me a congratulations recognition for a job well done.
Right.
I wrote the first card out. It was an old school handwritten note, very old school, personal. So I thought to myself, this is so standard, nothing special. So I went, to ChatGPT. So in the ChatGPT, I entered what I wanted, and what I got was a really good, solid beginning of a very impressive, very short little recognition note, and then I added to it. So I spent on the first one 20 minutes figuring out, what am I going to say? By the time I went to ChatGPT, I spent probably 3 minutes thinking about what I'm going to put in, and then out came my answer. I spent 3 more minutes adding some enthusiasm and some personality to it. So within 10 minutes, I had solved each of my challenges. I had the cards written, and they were very, very impressive. So that's an example of using it to the benefit. And you start thinking, well, where else can I use that? Think of all the times they're trying to generate a list of ideas.
Yeah.
How often do you think of, let's just ask ChatGPT? You may not get what you want, but you also may be thoroughly impressed. So it is like another team member that you should be calling on, or asking each person, if you're dividing up work, to, okay, you're going to take care of this and you're going to take care of that, but incorporate in that, make sure you do add into that some work from ChatGPT to see if we agree or what else you can figure out. So I would say start incorporating it into part of your daily work, and you'll start seeing more and more opportunities. I have colleagues who use it quite a bit, and some are younger than me and some are actually older than me. And the ones who I'm now learning from are the ones who are sometimes boomers, not for the young ones. And they figured out how to use it. And they're writing really interesting content. They're writing really interesting notes. They're writing really interesting emails. But ChatGPT can really change your game when you start to use it and then you build on it. You just can't rely on it to do the work.
No, and I think you build via life experience. The boomers look back at all the things they've ever seen. It draws attention. They remember, oh, yeah, and they've known. I've seen this kind of formatted note, letter, email for decades. How can I change? Hey, there's a nice filler. Oh, I remember someone using that word years ago on something. I like it. That'll personalize it. I think life, as much as the ChatGPT's new, the life experience of what people write and create really, for people who have done it all their life, seen it all, it allows them to say, wow, because I mean, all of us have found somebody that we've read something from who's just brilliant, naturally upstairs doing that kind of thing, Nazreen.
Yeah, and then there are some people that rely so much on AI word for word and just copy and paste, and you don't realize that some people catch that.
Oh,
It's obvious. It's obvious. There's
Yes.
so many ways you can tell that this is grabbed from AI, and especially cover letters. A lot. I've seen people on TikTok. They're like, okay, I this is what I use to make a cover letter using AI. This, as you said, it could be helpful just to gather up, your thoughts and make it into a very proper formatted letter. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with putting your thoughts into it and saying, okay, please help me put this together.
Yeah.
That's how
Well,
it's done.
you got to think, if you've applied for 50 jobs and your
Yeah.
resume and cover letter haven't got you what you want, probably go to ChatGPT and ask them for some new ideas. And it might be time for a new format. So if what you've got's not working, use ChatGPT to start with something new and then personalize it.
Yeah. Well, the cover letter you're supposed to personalize. That's where I always feel I'm supposed to tell you why I want to show up, and you're supposed to say, yeah, this guy'd be all right, instead of, no, this guy's too full of baloney. Forget it.
Right.
Well, and so when you use your skills, it's very arithmetic. We work together, 1 + 1 = 2, but then you harness some AI, and then it becomes exponential. 2 squared plus 2 squared is a lot more than 3.
Yes.
Well said.
It's a lot more than 3. And that's how you get outstanding production.
Michael, fantastic as usual, bringing us this is a very interesting survey. What a way to end our segments with you. And I have to say, Michael, we've tried hard because the disability community has always wanted something on employment. It's a biggest challenge to the disability community. So we started talking resumes and things like that when the show began, and wharfed into different areas from there. But being able to talk about trends, being able to lend it to what you guys in your research has brought out, I think was such a great find, and bringing you guys on when we learn about the surveys, and then having the discussion, can we make a segment out of this, and your enthusiasm, yourself personally, the organization, to be a part of what we do at our show and speaking to our audience has meant a lot. So I have to say it's been a pleasure and honor to hang out with you, Michael, while learning some very vital information about the Canadian job market through Robert Half Canada research, and we appreciate the tide and dedication to Kelly and Company, my friend.
Well, Kelly, Nazreen, Ramya, I've loved partnering with you. I think it's been, would I be wrong to say, 3 years, maybe 4?
Yeah.
I have looked forward
so.
to. I've looked forward to every one of our conversations, and I can't wait for our next one. I have no idea what the format's going to be, but please don't forget who I am. Don't lose my number. Call me whenever you need, whenever you want to chat. Either on the air, on media, or just want a conversation. I'm always here.
Awesome.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, Michael, appreciate it. And again, to all of you, thanks for the indulgence, the support. I know sometimes it was hard when you've got everybody else doing their work around you, and each one of you would come on, would find that place where we could do a nice hit with you. Appreciate it, man. Take care of yourself.
Thank you very much. See you guys.
Absolutely wonderful. Michael French, Robert Half Canada, and we are so blessed for their support over the years they've been a part of our show, Nazreen.
Always. So moving on to Mocktails. From Mocktails to booze-free bubbly, Canadians are saying yes to flavor without the hangover. Culinary expert Mary Mammoliti is here to break down the rise of non-alcoholic options. I gotta say, Mary, I'm a huge mocktail person. I make mocktails at home. I love this topic. And I was just talking to Jacob this morning about, he's like, the prices are ridiculous for mocktails with no alcohol. Like, why is that? But I definitely think it depends on where you get it from. But let's not jump ahead. What's fueling the shift, and why are more Canadians turning to non-alcoholic options?
Well, I mean, I'm with you. I love a mocktail, non-alcoholic option. The reason why they're well, if only they're choosing these beverages, there are so many reasons. And the one at the top of my list it's health awareness. So new Canadian guidelines, they suggest no more than 1 to 2 glasses or 1 to 2 drinks a week because of cancer risks. So that's made a lot of people rethink their habits and rethink going forward. Then there was what's called, or what still is, a sober curious lifestyle, right? That has increased in popularity, especially with Gen Z, millennials. I think everyone across the board, to be quite honest with you, they're skipping that alcohol entirely, and they want to support more of their wellness goals. They're thinking more along the lines of better sleep, think clearer, support even gut health with these drinks. And then honestly, there are better products out there now than there were before, right? So now we've got craft non-alcoholic beers, zero proof spirits, drinks that they look and they taste just as fancy as a cocktail. So they're a lot of fun. It's just, there's so much about the products that are out there now today, even compared to 2 years ago, right?
Yep.
It's the new normal. It's what started off as an online trend of dry January, right? It's actually stuck around, right? It's actually stuck around. And for many, it's just been non-alcoholic year round now.
Well, it's frustrating on the level of, like anything better for you, whenever you're trying to look out for your health, buy local, buy something organic, something better, it costs more. And we see that in certain times at places you're buying. But then how do you argue that, Mary, when, like, why do we go out and pay for a Cinnabon at $5 or $6 for a dessert? Why do we go to Starbucks and buy one of the fancy drinks at $6 and actually worry about a mocktail that might cost $6? I struggle with that. The mocktail, depending on the amounts of sugar or dietary situation there, is a better deal. It's a smarter choice to make alcohol, cigarettes. There's nothing positive there, right?
Yeah, and I'm with you on that.
Yeah, so it's unfortunate, but I use that argument. Well, why are you still paying so much, as if it was an alcoholic drink and blah, blah, blah. But we do the same thing the next day going to get your Starbucks.
Exactly. I mean, and about these mocktails, they do cost more because they're different types of ingredients that are added into. I get that, but what they're doing is they're also injecting a lot of health benefits to a lot of them.
Yes.
In terms of rehydrating, calming. There's those magnesium infused drinks that are calming. So I think that's where they're I don't know if they're just like saying, yes, this is why they cost more, but that has something to do with it because there are more health benefits to them.
Well, and you used to get that stuff at like fitness places, right? That you would walk up by allegedly. And again, you had to watch it there. But this is infused with this. This has that. At the old workout gyms years ago, the old Vic Tannies and so on used to have all these different things that you could go up and they had it. Good Life, all of them have these different things that you can go and open the cooler and buy. But we're looking at something that, like you're saying, is more of that positive choice, turning that place where you go dance, maybe scream, over drink, and wake up with a hangover the next morning. Hey, no, man, I'm going to wake up because I've had my carrot juice infused mocktail.
Yeah, and you're still having the same type of fun. It's just it's non-alcoholic.
Okay.
Which I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
Me too. Oh, so what are you seeing that's turning up here that we should really get into? Alcohol-free products that are showing up on our shelves.
There are so many that are hitting shelves, hitting online. They're offering a variety of options like non-alcoholic wine, beer, ready-to-drink cocktails. Some of the well-known brands, or some brands that I've come across, include Partake Brewing, Sobri. I'm so going to butcher this next one, but I'm going to try it. Atypique, which is a brand in Quebec. Clever Mocktails, a brand called Above, which is here in Toronto. Zero Riesling. These are just to name a few of them.
Nice.
They're stocked in, and the good part is that these are stocked in well-known grocery chains. So like Longo's, Loblaws, IGA, even Summerhill Market, they carry a whole line of or a whole selection of non-alcoholic beverages there. So there's a lot to choose from.
And they moved fast on making this available, Mary. Like when we started talking about this with you, it was 2 years ago, and we were like giggling about going to a place, the bars were starting to roll them out. Now to see this stuff, because people will take them home from the liquor store, from shop, and the kind of thing you can sell in the grocery store. And now we went from the sugary drinks discussion, it's a mocktail, have a bit of this and that in it, like a sweet and Shirley Temple, but more on kind of what's the word I'm looking for? A higher intensity Shirley Temple kind of beverage. That's okay. Now we're to the ones that are actually good for you, potentially.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned the Shirley Temple because that's what we were given in terms of mocktails. A
Yes.
syrup, which
Right.
is high in sugar, and a soda. Right.
Yep.
So that was our option. A juice and
a
soda.
sweet cherry.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Two of them if you were Kelly.
Those were the options. Yeah. Those were the options. So now they've branched out and they're looking more towards the wellness side of things.
Yeah. And Mary, do you have any favorite mocktail recipes listeners can try at home?
I thought you'd never ask. So this one here, it's so simple, and it's just an easy go-to. So grab some fresh mint, muddle that in a container in a glass, and then some lime juice.
Let me grab my notebook.
A splash of maple syrup, and then top that off with some soda water. It's a maple mojito, which is fresh. It's not overly sweet, which is what I really like, and it's refreshing. And the bonus is everyone in the family can have some of that.
And we can pretend it's Canada. Maple.
Yeah. Maple, see? That'll be the new maple drink, the new Canadian drink.
Which has been our kind of trend. And like you said, everybody in the family can be involved with this. It's sort of like we felt as a kid if Dad was ordering a beer and you would have your Shirley Temple. Are the restaurants and bars keeping up with the trend?
Oh, absolutely. They most definitely are. And they're getting really creative and having a lot of fun with it. So more places, they're offering more zero-proof drink menus now. So it's not just that one option or two. They're actually giving menus. So think alcohol-free Negronis, which I've had, and they're delicious. Espresso martinis that are alcohol-free. Even tasting flights. So this is this was unheard of 2 years ago.
Yes.
Right? And we're having it now. So it's no longer just like we said, like the little cranberry and juice and soda. These are actual fun. They're playful. And then people could experience just the same thing.
Yeah.
I love
So
that
I don't drink
hangover.
So I don't drink soda because of the sugar. I do not like the taste of zero sugar or diet beverages. So I've just given it up. But when you think of potentially using some of that stuff to even make these already decent mocktails healthier, and you going to the zero sugars, the dietary drink, and disguising some of that with this beautiful taste, somebody like me might be able to say, hey man, I could tolerate that a little more. Have you seen any of that in the trend made with diet beverages? Or are we steering more away from the diet or from the sodas at all?
No, they're doing it.
A lot of
However,
them, right? Yeah.
They are using soda, but another alternative is if you don't like soda, use carbonated water.
Right.
Because you still get that fizz effect. So I would definitely do some of that. And yeah.
And as we've talked about, the fizz is part of it, right? Because it's part of the whole experience, like you said, about a kid saying, I'm grown up, I'm having one of those fancy drinks that mom does, or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, the fizz is part of it. I think the whole experience, because the fizz does offer that texture. So it's like this little popping in your mouth. And then you're combining that with maybe some citrus or some mint. And it's all the flavors that combine to give this like fun little palate taster kind of thingy. Yeah. I'm searching for words, but all the good words that go in there. Definitely.
Awesome.
Well, how are non-alcoholic producers embracing sustainability?
Okay, so some brands, they're making beverages with low water usage, recyclable packaging, even local sourcing, which is very important. So they're keeping all that in mind. And it's about reducing waste, offering more eco-friendly alternatives. A brand like that came up when I was doing my search was Groovy. So for example, they use minimal processing and carbon neutral shipping, which is phenomenal.
Oh, yes.
Awesome.
Yeah. So they definitely are being more environmentally conscious about it.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Thank you so much, Mary.
Oh, this was fun.
This was fun. Now I'm craving one. For more of Mary's recipes and tips, go to marymammoliti.com or at Kitchen Confession on Instagram and TikTok.
I'm anxious to see where the healthier trend goes, right? And they're saying, Mary said, how much more people have glammed onto this. It's incredible across the country. Can't speak for the whole world yet. Haven't looked at those stats. But, Niz, I think this is so important. And it's not because, folks, I'm Mr. Anti-alcohol, anti-cigarettes, anti-whatever. Has nothing to do with that. You do you, whatever. Just leave me out of it. But the fact is, I like this. I'm a person who's given up these sodas and stuff like that. And I'm looking at, hey, man, if there's a way that I might enjoy a diet beverage, if it's mixed into one of these or something, it's a win-win possibly. Or maybe I'll return to the odd one and be able to actually have something healthy.
It's so nice to have that option. I used to ask for mocktails and I would be looked at like, what are you talking about? And now that there's that it's, trending and people are used to it and they've been offering it everywhere and they're more creative about it. It's blessed. That's all I gotta say.
Like asking for cold coffee in the wintertime.
Yeah,
why would you do that? What do you want me to do? I don't even know how to get you that. Just give me some of the coffee that's gotten cold, or throw some ice in it. Oh, let me think on that. On the next show, ladies and gentlemen, Michael Fair will bring us one last bunch of recommended podcasts when he joins us. That'll help us keep our summer fresh with audio entertainment for sure. He has everything from horror to general knowledge trivia, comedian conversation, and history broken down for us. Michael Fair with us for his last appearance on the show tomorrow. Also joining us for a last appearance, Mr. Brock Richardson will co-host a little bit of the program with us, and we'll have some thoughts and hear what he has to say as well on our live show era as one of the hosts, and of course contributors hosting on our show as a backup. All that tomorrow on the Friday edition. Fedora's off to you.
Thanks for tuning in to Kelly & Company. Follow us on all social media, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more.